question over there. Oh, hang on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Derbyshire Planning. Bit of housekeeping before we start. If you hear the fire alarm, please, it will not be a drill. Please leave by the double doors, go down, out at the front, at the main entrance, and congregate at the far back wall of the car park. We are being recorded live on YouTube, so if anybody does not want to be on YouTube, please indicate to our committee clerk and she'll try and get you out of the picture, so to speak. So anyway, we'll move on with the agenda. So item number 1, apologies, Jackie.
No apologies tonight, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 2, approval of minutes of the previous meeting. I therefore move.
Second, Chair.
All those in favour, please show. It's unanimous. Right, item 3, interest. Any councillor declaring interest on anything we've got business tonight? No? In which case then, what we'll do is we'll move on to the main body of the committee. So the first application is number 4.1. This is a variation of condition 32 of planning permission 14/00891 full to allow for widening scope of use of site, including corporate training, external courses, school study groups, family groups, holiday camps and parties at Mount Cook Adventure Centre, Portalade, Middleton by Wirksworth. You will notice there is some late representation, so before we move on to the speakers, I'll just let you go through that. We're about there now, members. Take it on board? Right. So I have 2 speakers on this. The first speaker is Mr. Nigel Pratley, a local resident, to speak against the application. You have 3 minutes. I'll indicate when you've got 30 seconds left. Don't forget to press the button on the mic so we can hear. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Weddings, festivals, parties. These range of activities that will extend well into the night and early morning can only cause major negative impact upon the residents of Malthouse Close, Steeple Grange and Bowl Hill. This will be both in terms of noise and light intrusions. From your visit to the site, you will have noted that Mount Cook sits at an elevated position. It is not surrounded by woodland. A line of deciduous trees is the only barrier between Mount Cook and residences. Consequently, any sound generated on Mount Cook site travels far. Some of the opposition letters that you'll have read come from residents in Bowl Hill, across the valley. Residents have already experienced similar activities to the ones being proposed in the application. Many of these activities have generated highly intrusive noise and caused major upset for residents. Examples of which include residents have complained about the impact this has had upon the use of their gardens, noise disturbances at night and early morning. Many residents report of moving bedrooms. On many of these occasions, Mount Cook management have organised events on a sole and exclusive hire arrangement. This means that no Mount Cook staff on these occasions attend the events. How can residents have the confidence that any measures or conditions designed to alleviate disturbance will be enforced? Clearly, the request for additional documentation from the applicant in the form of a noise management plan and a location plan is strongly indicative that officers and the council foresee that the extended use of Mount Cook has a potential to create major difficulties for residents. For example, the proposals for designated parking and a site of up to 100 vehicles will cause considerable disturbance late in the night and early morning. Disturbance in the form of door slamming, people talking as they walk to their cars, headlamp light directly in line with residents' windows. The sound insulation measure identified in the noise report will be unenforceable. Attendees to events will on warm summer evenings spend time outside. They will open windows. I can't see how that will be enforceable. A sound level of 96 decibels at 30 metres from the building, equivalent of a tractor or a lawnmower, will at midnight carry considerable distance across the valley. It exceeds the World Health Authority's recommendation level of 40 decibels in residential areas. I disagree strongly with Ratcliffe's notes at 6.3 in your documentation that the current application to widen the diversity of activity has the possibility of a strong antisocial effect of noise and disruption for neighbouring properties. I think that it is highly likely. I do not have the confidence that the measures to try to minimise noise will be enforceable. Would the original application for the Mount Cook Activity Centre have been carried if these additional activities, weddings, festivals and parties, been part of the original proposal? Thank you very much.
The next speaker I have on my list is Miss Teresa Critchlow. That's the agent to speak in favour of the application, and you have 5 minutes, and I'll indicate when you have 30 seconds left.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members and officers. Mount Cook is an established enterprise which is located within a sustainable location close to Wirksworth with a wide range of services and facilities. When the centre was planned in 2014, the activity market was dominated by national citizen service requirements. The first guests at Mount Cook in July 2016 were indeed groups of national citizen service young people from London, and the centre has had groups each year since then. However, the procurement for this has changed in the last 12 months, and there are currently no bookings for the 2020 season. Activity centres across the UK are in the same position, and there are current reports of centre closures as the market weakens. The activity centres that are surviving are all having to diversify into other markets such as weddings and corporate groups, alongside their traditional offer to schools and youth groups. The proposal in front of you today seeks to vary the condition attached to the original permission to allow ancillary uses such as, but not limited to, birthday parties, weddings, corporate and adult training development, apprentice programmes, university external courses, primary and secondary ground groups, revision and study days, summer camps, holiday camps, family or group bookings. It does not make reference to festivals. This will be carried out outside of school time and at weekends in order to make the best use of the facilities all year round. Whilst the use of the centre has indeed intensified over the years with the provision of associated development, these complement the original field activity study centre building. Mount Cook remains a not-for-profit business. This arrangement is indeed how Mount Cook was incorporated at the beginning, and there has been no change to their status since that time. Mount Cook currently employs around 45 local people, and the ability to attract a wider group of customers to the centre will support and secure a growing number of employees. The main concern appears to relate to the impact of the proposal on the amenity of the surrounding neighbours and their enjoyment of their properties. Mount Cook is a responsible provider and widely engages with the public, town council and local residents regarding their facilities and the use of the site. In late 2019, Mount Cook initiated and hosted a residents' meeting to address and respond to residents' concerns over noise, and as a result, practices at the centre have indeed been adapted with future residents' meetings planned. The application has been indeed accompanied by a noise management plan, which clearly sets out proposed sound control measures as part of the proposal. No objections have been received from environmental health, and the planning case officer concludes that the complementary uses can be adequately controlled by conditions to sufficiently mitigate any noise impacts to protect the amenity of neighbouring properties. The applicant is happy for a condition requiring compliance with the noise management plan to be included as part of any decision, and the Environmental Protection Act, which covers statutory nuisance, provides further comfort for residents going forward. Subject to conditions, no objections have been raised from highways nor any other consultees. In conclusion, the proposal will comprise of the sustainable growth of an existing not-for-profit tourist facility which supports the environment and local neighbourhood. Full utilisation of the activity centre will ensure its ongoing viability and bring a number of associated economic benefits, including the generation of rural employment. To this end, it would be fully compliant with adopted local and national planning policies, and members are therefore respectfully invited to concur with their own planning officer's recommendation for a conditional approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I go back to officers, Councillor Buckler, you will not be able to take part in the debate on this item. Okay, just for clarity, is there any interest you would want to declare before we move on? No. No. Okay, right. In which case I'll go back to the officers. Is anything you'd like to come back on? Sarah?
Just members to note, obviously the late reps, in terms of we've looked at the two conditions again and been in touch with the agent, and they didn't, one of them, particularly number 13, in terms of the use, was unduly restricted on them. It was, more restrictive than they have for the current use now. So we've reworded that and actually looked at splitting off the two uses, the use now as well as the complementary uses. And I think, I've been in sort of negotiation with the applicant as well as the environmental health officer, looking at the noise management plan, and then looking at the wording of all the conditions that we've sought to mitigate all the impacts, and feel that it is an acceptable scheme.
Right, members, to questions. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I want to apologise to officers because I was confused about the distance the 96 decibels measure was taken from, and I was reminded that it was 30 metres. I asked a question which I withdrew because I thought otherwise, but it is indeed 96 decibels at 30 metres from the perimeter of the building. Now, as the sound levels in an ideal environment go down at 6 dB for every doubling in distance, at 200 metres, which is approximately the distance of the houses from the properties, the sound level should be about 78 decibels. Would the officers like to comment on that level of sound, taking account of the fact that 80 decibels is a prolonged 80 decibels in a working environment is something that is of concern? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll come back on that question. I think it's important for members to assess this application on its merits and having full regard to the noise plan that accompanies the management plan that accompanies the application. Now, that proposes a package of measures. So we've got, in the case of events taking place in the evenings, you've got a restriction on the use of the building and an area hatched green on the noise management plan, and management of that particular space in terms of how it's used. Clearly there will be some impacts on nearby residents, but we feel that with the measures that have been identified, so control over lobby areas, control over windows being closed when events are taking place and music is being played, and also having someone actually supervise these events so that people aren't encroaching out into the wider site and potentially causing more nuisance to nearby residents. And we feel with those controls, noise will be within acceptable limits and we'd have control over the impacts.
So you want to come back, do you, Councillor?
Would you agree, though, that the sound level is 96 dBs, 30 metres out from the outside of the building?
That's correct, it's from the perimeter of the
building. And therefore, in an ideal world, ideal environment, it would be 78 decibels at 200 metres, which is quite loud.
Yes, I'd just like to point out that I'm not an environmental health officer, so it would be inappropriate for me to comment on those particular standards. We've obviously engaged the services of our own environmental health officers. They've looked at this application and they're happy that the noise generated from the use with the measures that are in place would mean that noise levels would be within acceptable limits in this case.
Councillor Burful.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. The first one I probably know the answer to, but am I correct in thinking that Mount Cook at the moment hasn't got a drinks licence?
Sorry, it has got
It has?
Yes.
Right, okay. And the other question is, in the original planning application, application in 2014, the officers talked about the sensitive nature of the site. What did we mean exactly by that? Because presumably that's not changed.
If you look at the reason for that particular condition that the application seeks to vary, the main reason is in relation to highway safety. However, we have to consider the wider impacts of any alternative use on the local environment, and that does include the residential amenity of the occupants of nearby residential properties. There's a number of concerns and issues in respect of the original application. The officer would have taken into consideration the visual impact of a new building, the associated impacts on the local environment, so wildlife, the fauna and the nearby SSI, but also the residential amenity impact. So there's a wide variety of environmental issues engaged by the original proposal, and some of those carry forward to this latest proposal for wider use of the building.
Councillor Pawley.
Yes, first of all I'd like to go to the late information that we've received. Could you confirm that there will always be somebody on site when these events are taking place, so that if there are problems with excess noise, there is somebody there to be aware of it? That's the first question. The second one was, in relation to that information, was about condition number 9. Are we going to change that, as we're not going to have any hard standing? And then there's one of my own, which is, hang on a minute, I'll get there. Oh yes, I'm just wondering if the change of conditions, and I'm not sure that this is even a question I should be asking, but would the change of conditions give amusement park development rights and permitted development, or any other kind of permitted development rights that we're not aware of at the moment?
There's a number of questions there. The first question relating to the conditions, I think you talked about supervision of events.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, condition 16 specifically secures someone at Mount Cook, a member of staff supervising those events at all times. So that is built into the conditions. I caught the last question, and that
right,
was.
I did read that. I just wanted it set out now. That's
Yeah.
The last one, I've got the last one. Right, about condition 9, and we're not having any hard standing now. Will it be changed?
That's correct. They don't intend, it's not necessary to do that. They're looking at doing it by, stewards and showing people to where to park and keeping it as grass.
Yeah, they are doing that, but are you going to change condition 9 then?
That's what I'm suggesting in the wording to change as per the late reps, yes.
Shall I come back on the final question about the use and the restrictions that are in place? So condition 13, in its revised form as set out in the late representation sheet, it is very clear there that the main use of the building is as a residential activity and field centre, and the complementary uses are clearly defined. And the condition is clear in my view that it restricts the use of that building to those uses only, and not to within any other use class, even within the same schedule of the use classes order.
Yeah, I can see that. The reason I asked the question about permitted development rights is because of the zip wire, and if other kind of games or uses came into play, would we then have to give further consent? I'm just thinking of Gulliver's Kingdom and the way the development can go on there without, because they've got permitted development rights. I'm wondering if that could happen at such a place as Mount Cook.
Yeah, the nature of the use is such that it would fall into a sui generis category in my view, but just reflecting on your point there, I think because the condition just refers to the use classes order, it might be worth also including the general permitted development order in there as well, because that would restrict any permitted changes of use under that legislation, which is separate to the main planning legislation and use classes order. So
I would agree with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Quite a few questions, Chris. The first question is, now that the environment people have now said it's quite acceptable noise levels, will there be a regular noise monitoring by our health people, environmental health people? That's one question. The other question is also the time limits. Are they 11 o'clock or 11:30?
If you look at the conditions, there is a number of conditions there. So, condition 15, the use of the premises for eventual operate in accordance with the management plan. And amplified music will need to cease at midnight on Sundays to Thursdays and 1 o'clock Friday to Saturday, unless otherwise agreed. So there are controls on amplified music being played from that particular venue within.
It's a little bit late, isn't it, in midweek? Do you think so?
It is, but with the measures that have been identified in the noise management plan, we're satisfied that
to keep the noise level down.
would be within
So it'll need to
limits.
be monitored at that time, as it's in order. Also, will the staff, as I think all the questions have been asked, but a lot of residents have asked me, will the staff be on site, because they haven't always been on site when these different activities have taken place.
Just going back to condition 16, which does require all events to be supervised by a member of staff at Mount Cook Activity Centre.
And will there be regular group meetings between the residents and the staff of Mount Cook, so we can get a pleasant atmosphere and have more input from the residents?
I believe there has been ongoing dialogue between residents and the operators of this particular site, and a lot of the complaints that are raised directly with the operator. So I'd hope that dialogue was ongoing, and they would be sympathetic to any concerns that residents would raise. But we'd hope at the same time that the conditions that are in place and the controls we have would be sufficient to ensure that they're not unduly affected by this development.
I think regular meetings are essential, really, between the staff. My last question is, being it's a not-for-profit company, these extra activities now are commercial activities. Will all this extra revenue go into the viability of the company? Is it a question you can answer?
Sorry, the operation.
Well, now that weddings and events and different events and profit coming in from that will now go into the company, right?
I think you've had a clear message from the applicant tonight that this additional use of the building is necessary to ensure the long-term viability of that centre. It'd be inappropriate for us to condition that money must be spent on that business. It's a way. It is what it is. It's a use. It's a tourism-related use, but albeit it's not a profit organisation, it is still a business, if you like, and how that business operates is outside of planning controls.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Right, I'm going to take two more questions. So, Councillor Bright first.
Thank you, Chair. Could you just take me through the layers of potential enforcement that are at our disposal if there was any deviation or any situations with loud noise or disturbance that we could use to deal with it?
Thank you, Councillor Bright. There are a number of conditions, one which seeks to secure appropriate noise mitigation through the implementation of the noise management plan. Members may wish to look at that condition and think, would it be worth putting the onus on the applicant in this case to ensure compliance with that noise plan at all times and to keep a written record of that plan having been complied with? So for events, for example, at a weekend, we'd then have the confirmation that the plan has been strictly adhered to in accordance with what's stated within it, and that record be available for our inspection upon request. That would be helpful, and I think that would give us the confidence that that management plan will be enforced by the operator in this particular case. We'd hope that the operator would operate within strict accordance with that plan. If that didn't happen, we have the potential to pursue breach of condition. There's no right of appeal in respect of that breach. which should be a deterrent in itself for the operator to wish to operate within the parameters of the permission. If that doesn't happen, we have other powers available to us. We've got licensing powers in terms of the licensing that the operator will need to hold events at this particular site. And we've also got enforcement powers. If nuisance is identified, then we've got enforcement we've got the environmental health regulations to control noise nuisance if that was to arise.
Okay, so we have quite a few measures that we can use if there is a disturbance, if any of the local residents feel that they have been inconvenienced by the noise, or there's been any situations which they haven't been expecting. So I'd like to move that recommendation and just set out that we have a logging system, if that's acceptable.
Just to come back on that, I think it's perfectly reasonable to ask or to include in the conditions some form of verification, to ask the operator to keep a record of events and compliance with the management plan, so that we can refer back to that should there be issues at this site, so that we can ensure that that management plan has been strictly adhered to in this case.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Archer.
My question's been answered. It's literally the same question as Councillor Wright's. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I'm going to move into debate. Councillor Slatton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this site came about 4 years ago. It brings many children from all over the country to come and enjoy the countryside and activities, and it's very successful, really. But in the winter months, as I go past it, I'm the ward member for this area, as I go past it, it's not very deserted in the winter, and it must be quite a job to get revenue in the winter. So if this is going to help them to improve and get a better profit and put more profit into the enterprise, all the better. And I'm quite happy with the management plan. Now the conditions have been approved, and everybody's can come back on this, and so therefore I'm going to move it, Chair.
Does that find a seconder? Councillor Bright? Oh, Councillor Bright's moved it already, yeah. No, it's all right. So
Sorry, I'll second it.
So you want to second it,
yeah,
with the proviso that we add in this monitoring for the noise?
Yeah.
Yep.
What Councillor Bright suggested, yeah.
Okay. So I'll take Councillor Hughes now.
Thank you, Chair. I propose that we defer this until we know what volume of sound is to be.
It's already been moved and seconded. Sorry.
What can I do then?
Vote against it. Yeah, vote against it.
Okay. Right. Well, I think we should vote against it then, because the amenity loss to the residents, that's, if they face with 78 decibels of sound at 11 o'clock at night, which is just too high. And within the management plan indicates that the at 96 decibels would indicate that there was going to be a sound level of 78 decibels at the boundary of the properties facing it. And I would expect people not being able to sleep with that level of sound. Now, I'm not against the development. It's at the proposed use itself. I'm only against the management plan, which I think is too generous in terms of the noise levels of 96 decibels at 30 metres from the building. That suggests that there won't be that much sound insulation provided by the building, and perhaps they could improve the sound insulation in the building or reduce the sound levels of the music played late at night.
Councillor Burford.
Thank you, Chair. I do actually go along with what Councillor Hughes has said. This is one of these difficult ones for me anyway, because we're trying to balance, aren't we, the need, if you like, for a centre like this to increase their activities and to make them more viable. But and you know, from what I've seen, they provide excellent activities, most of which are going to be during the day with children, and young adults, and I would imagine the residents have not got a problem with that. The problem comes with the because this application talks about weddings and birthday parties amongst other things. Now, if you look at 7.3, it talks about primary and secondary school groups, revision and study days, summer camps, holiday camps, family bookings, adventure breaks. I haven't got any problem with that at all, because they're not likely to have loud music with DJs, are they? It's when you come to the weddings and the birthday parties that the problems could arise. And I absolutely realise that we've got enforcement measures, but if this happens at 1:45 on a Sunday morning, we would not have any officer to come out and deal with it. So I think sometimes we need to be realistic about these things, and I would go along with what Councillor Hughes says, and if it's not possible to defer it, then with some reluctance I would have to vote against it.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Bull.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, although we're all sat here, none of us are experts in this, and I think we have put quite a lot of conditions on, and I think it should be a case that we give it the chance. If it goes over the notification of this, then that's the time to bring it in. Who's to say that it is going to get as many? We're looking at everything, and the one about the noise is through the day. We need these activity centres going on. This is a thing we need at the end of the day. It's not a nightclub, it's not anything, it's a one-off situation through the year. The other way is you could put a situation on and say you can only have so many events per year, but they probably have to apply for extended licences anyway. And I think if you go to the licensing laws, you'll find that that is restricted anyway. So with that, I'm all for it.
Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, I was not on site this afternoon as county officers on other business, but I know the site extremely well. It's next to my ward, and I've had the benefit of visiting the site on a number of occasions the last time when they hosted the children of Chernobyl, and I'm quite satisfied they've got a very good manager in there and a management scheme. And so we're here where we've been in planning before on many occasions. That balance between trying to strike a chord with trying to keep a business viable and trying to keep the public happy is very difficult. I do believe that we should follow officers' recommendations for approval. I'm satisfied with the conditions that are imposed, and I'm also satisfied that hopefully there's no problems for the public, but if there is, then those procedures will fall into place and we will deal with those problems adequately.
Thank you. Councillor Pawley.
Yeah, I agree. It's a difficult one, this, because I know what it's like if you're in a house that's close, and I haven't got the expertise that Councillor Hughes has got, so I really, to be quite honest, I don't know what the difference is between what our environmental officers have actually said, because I haven't seen that paperwork. It's a bit difficult to find at the moment. And what Councillor Hughes has just said. So, although I agree with that, I also agree with Councillor Bull on that we need every activity centre we can get for the children to get them away from screens. And we also need more employment in this district, good employment, which this would provide. So it's a very, I'm on a knife edge, but I think I'm going to plump for going with officer recommendations, simply because I haven't got the expertise, and the environmental health team have said they feel it's okay, and we will be able to follow up if it doesn't turn out to be okay.
Right, I've got Councillor Fitzherbert on the list.
Thank you very much, John. Well, we want people to visit Derbyshire. As you saw today, it's a very well-run centre with lots of activities, and obviously they've looked at their business plan and they need it to be viable. I think we're giving the impression tonight that there's going to be a wedding every weekend or something like that, or every Friday, Saturday night. I really don't think, from having chatted to the applicant, that is A, what he wants, or B, what he desires, or C, what he'll get. And I really think, in my experience of running these things, it will be self-policing. And I have every confidence that if anything were to go wrong with local residents or whatever, that they'd be the first one to try and sort it out the next day or whatever. And I really, I'd be very sad if our noise abatement officers, etc., were called on this one at all in this one. So I really think that the applicant, with his sound knowledge of the business and of the centre, will certainly make sure this happens. I have every confidence in this working.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzherbert. So it's been moved and seconded for approval with the addition of the monitoring of the noise, the additional condition they're adding in. So that's up for approval. So all those in favour, please show. All those against? That's it, it's carried. Thank you. So now we'll move on to application 4.2, which is a formation of access and off-street parking, airs at 3 to 5, Roddersley Lane, Yevley, Derbyshire. We have, I think, a little bit of late rep, so if you want to quickly look at that, then we'll move on. So I think you've all read it now. There is only one speaker on this item, and that's Mr. Jonathan Imbert, the agent to speak in favour of the application. You have 5 minutes, and I'll indicate when you have 30 seconds left. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. The applicant's properties do not currently have any off-street parking. Rodsley Lane is relatively narrow and has no footpath, meaning that when cars are parked on the highway there is limited room for larger vehicles such as tractors with trailers, which pass regularly in this rural location. There is also limited room for pedestrians and vehicles to pass at the same time. To resolve this issue, the applicants propose to utilise their front gardens for parking. Members may recall that a similar application was considered at the neighbouring property. Having been granted permission by the committee, development has now been sensitively carried out on site and contributes positively to the surrounding area rather than detracting from it. As set out in the officer's report, the majority of the work proposed could be carried out without planning permission. The removal of frontage hedgerow is exempted from planning control under the hedgerows regulations, and the hard surfaces could be provided under permitted development rights, provided that they do not drain onto the highway. It is only the points of access onto the road that need permission. The proposals would not look out of keeping in the context of the similar development next door, which has been carried out to a high standard. The Highway Authority has raised no objection to the proposal, and neither has the local parish council. It is our view that the visual impact of the three accesses is outweighed by the benefits in terms of the safe and efficient use of Rodsley Lane, and as such we would encourage members to grant planning permission in this instance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, short and sweet. So, members, should I say, is anything you'd like to come back on this?
I'm happy for you to take this one to questions, Chair.
Move on to questions then. Councillor Slack.
Just one question, Chris. If this is this ground's dug out, will the hedgerows be put in behind the retaining wall?
To guarantee that, you'd have to condition it. If you're minded to approve this application, whatever reason that may be, you'd want to secure, presumably, an appropriate scheme of hard and soft landscaping, and for that to be implemented prior to first use of the parking areas to be created.
That one's condition after. Can we put that in as a condition then?
Well, the recommendation of officers is to refuse this application, so that's the recommendation.
Could that be a condition then?
It could potentially be a condition if you're minded to go against officer recommendation.
Councillor Hughes.
I hope I've got the timing of this one right. I'd like to move to approve, but I need to ask a question. So I'd like to ask why, in this case, the hedges are so important. I mean, you say in your report that it's because it preserves the rural landscape, but in fact, this part of the road isn't particularly rural.
No, the issue for officers is that we have an area of land in front of this run of dwellings, that contributes to the rural character of that lane. You haven't got pedestrian footways, you've got space between the houses and the carriageway edge, which contributes positively, in our view, to the character of the area. When we're considering development, and the development in this case is the engineering works associated with forming the parking areas, because the sites aren't level, but also the means of access as well onto the highway. So what we're doing is we're introducing a layer of development between the houses and the carriageway edge, which has an urbanising effect, in an officer's view, on this part of the village. Hence why we're recommending refusal of this application.
Can I suggest, Chris, that on the basis of consistency, that it needs to be approved, because we have already approved next door, and to be honest, there are far worse examples of...
Excuse me, we're in questions. Okay. That is debate. So unless you've got a question, I'll move on to the next speaker.
All right, well, like the consistency.
In which case, Councillor Paul.
Yes, I've got two questions. Do you know if they're thinking of putting 2 cars on each of these fronts? So we're going to finish up with 6 cars along there. And if so, is there any way that we could restrict it to 1 car so that we could perhaps retain some of the hedgerow in between? Would there be enough access if we wanted to just get 1 car on each plot?
Just to clarify, the proposal is for 2 parking spaces to serve each dwelling. The issue which members would have is if they wanted to alter the proposal in that way, is it could have quite severe implications on visibility onto the highway, and we need to run that scheme, which is a different scheme in my view, past the local highway authority for their view.
I've got 3 questions, is that all right, Chair?
Carry on.
Is this a joint application from all 3 households through 1 agent? And if it is, would they consider using the entire piece of land so they could park their cars in the 3 cars, if it was restricted to 3 cars, in the centre and retain some of the hedging? That's what I was thinking.
The difficulty is it would acquire, or depending on what your views were on that, it may consume a parcel of land that might not be in the ownership or control of one of the properties, so it causes all sorts of problems in that respect.
Lastly, because of our climate change intentions, I wonder if we could put a condition on saying that because of water runoff and flooding issues that we're having all over the district, if we could put a condition on saying that the actual surface had to be grass with a protective layer underneath rather than cement. As I don't agree with the agent, I thought the house that has already been given consent didn't look very rural. So I think maybe we could just increase the rurality of what it looked like by having grass there instead of having concrete.
Members just need to be conscious of if they were to recommend approval of this application contrary to officer advice, we need to reflect on the consultation comments that we've received. And the local highway authority would require particularly new accesses for that first section, probably the whole parking areas in this case, to be a bound surface. And I appreciate your comments about drainage, but again there'd be a condition that would require some form of drainage which would ensure surface water discharges to a permeable part of the site.
Okay. Yep. Councillor Burford. No, I'm not saying. I can tell a few more jokes if you like.
Can I ask, was there a landscape condition when number 6 was approved? That's the first question. And if so, has it been done to those conditions?
There was no landscaping condition, so there are 5 conditions, and other than the statutory timeframe condition, they're all highway conditions, so secure appropriate drainage, the gradients of the parking areas and the accesses, and visibility displays.
So why wasn't there a landscape condition so that we would have been able to have more rural it would look more rural on number 6. I mean, I think Councillor Pawley was quite right that if we were minded to approve this tonight, we would need to have some kind of landscape condition. I mean, there are such things as permeable surfaces that we could maybe condition. Is that so? The other question was, can I suppose this is a difficult decision for the recommendation for the officers to come up with, or based on the fact that number 6 has already been approved, did that have any bearing on your recommendation, or was it one of these that's on balance?
Yeah, a number of questions there. Just reiterating my previous point about the hard surfacing or the surfacing material, we are governed really by the local highway authority in terms of their requirements, and they'll want some form of bound surface so close to the carriageway edge. We recommended refusal of the access to number 6. I mean, there are differences in that this is an application which affects 3 dwellings, so you could argue that the cumulative impacts of the loss of that entire section of hedge and the implications or effects of carrying out engineering works to such an extent along the lane is more harmful than the development at number 6. But we're consistent in our view, but this is a proposal for three accesses as opposed to 1 previously.
Councillor Archer.
Sort of addressed it there, but just to clarify, if we go with offer to recommendation and refuse this, is there a vulnerability in terms of the fact that there could be an appeal based on the fact that we approve number 6 and then are turning this one down? Are we potentially vulnerable to appeal here if that was to happen?
No, each application is assessed on its merits. We've come up with this recommendation. We think it's a sound recommendation. Obviously, it'd be potentially tested at appeal. I don't believe we'd be vulnerable to an award of cost. I think it's a perfectly reasonable and sound reason for refusal in this case.
And I think what we've got to take stock of is we're looking at numbers 3 to 5 and not at number 6. I know what happened at number 6 was against officers' recommendations last time, so I think we just need to keep that separate as well. Yeah, Councillor Pawley.
I'm sorry to come back on this, Chair, but as far as the surfacing is concerned, are you saying that Highways Authority will not allow any kind of surface that is drainable? No kind of permeable surface can be used next to a main road, or a small road this is. Are you saying that?
I think we need to run any proposal to run an alternative surfacing or to require the applicant to lay down an alternative surfacing material would need to be referred on to the Highway Authority. The reason being is that they're very keen not to have extraneous material deposited onto the highway because it poses in itself a danger to highway users. I appreciate that there are permeable surfacing materials that wouldn't result in extraneous material being deposited onto the highway, but we need to know what that was.
Oh, you wanted to come back, Councillor Pawley?
Yeah, I think we ought to defer it until we find out if there is something.
Well, at the moment we have got there is a suggestion from Councillor Hughes who's moved against officer's recommendation, but it hasn't been seconded yet, so we've got that on the table to deal with first.
Okay.
So anyway, Councillor Stack, I'll take the last question from Councillor Stack, and then we'll move
just a quick one, Chair. Yeah, there is grass blocks. You're talking about having a grass drive. I worked on the environment day to see the men used to put grass blocks in, which are blocks where the grass goes through, but they're not always ever successful because in this sort of weather, when it's pouring down in rain, the grass turns to mud, and the mud, and instead of sloping ground, the mud runs off and it could run into the road. So there is that we could use, but I don't think it's that successful, to be honest. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So now I'm going to move into debate. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Again, apologies for not being on site, but I've been to the site previous and I didn't agree with the overturn of officer's recommendation, so you can see where I'm coming from. I think it's right and proper to try and keep that edge. And look, you know, this is our green credential time, folks. Do we want green credentials as an authority or not? So I think if we allow tarmac to go on there, or whatever service does go on, it goes against our green credentials. So I believe the officers have got this right for all the right reasons, so I'll move it, Chair.
Right, so that's been moved and seconded for approval. Yeah, Councillor Slack?
Yeah, I'm taking the other view, Chair. I was one of the people what was on site last time when we approved it, and we thought, looking at the road and all the traffic on the road, it's a narrow road, it was made for horse and carts originally, obviously, and if you look at the road, all the traffic down the road, if that's taken off the road, it makes it a much better street scene, and if the edges are taken back behind where the excavation's been done and the edges are put at the back, it'll also screen the property. So I think it's a good scheme, and I can't go along with it. Yes, there will be tarmacs on the drive, but there'll be tarmac everywhere. It needs to be drainage put in. So I'm sorry I can't go along with that.
I mean, what we need to do is find out whether it is actually Councillor Hughes's motion to go against officer's recommendations finds a seconder before we can move on.
I'll second Councillor Hughes' motion.
Now, in which case then, what I will do is we'll move to possibly the first vote on this, which is against officers and for approval. So those all in favour...
Before we do that, before we do that, can I pose a slight change to the approval, that we approve with conditions, for example, that adequate drainage is provided and landscaping to maintain the street scene as far as possible.
Yeah. Can we clarify the reason as to why you want to move to approval?
I want to move to approval because I think
it has to be on sound planning.
That that it will increase the amenity for the residents and also for local people, because it will make the street scene safer, and it could potentially improve the quality of the environment.
I think from what Councillor Hughes has said, and just listening to the previous the debate on this, is I think reflecting on the minutes of the application that was considered at number 6, whereby it was agreed that the removal of vehicles from the public highway will be beneficial to the safe and free flow of traffic, thereby benefiting highway safety. Is that what you mean in terms of? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. In which case, then we'll go for the motion that is against officer's recommendation and for approval. So I'll go to the vote first. So all those for approval of the scheme, please show.
Can I just ask, Chair?
No, I know, I've gone to the vote, sorry.
4, 5, 6.
Right. You sure? Yeah? Okay. All those against approval, please show.
You can't
vote twice, sorry. Nice try, George. So I'm afraid that's been lost. So the motion, the substantive motion, is back on the table.
Can I just say though, Chair, that not being given the right just to explain myself, I'm all for green credentials, my goodness, but we're talking about a short little bit of hedge, and if we condition it,
no, exactly.
Excuse
me, Councillor.
I'm not into cross-party.
No, exactly. This is the planning committee, and you all say it's not supposed to be political, so please don't politicise it. So in which case then we will move to the substantive, which was put forward by Councillor Purdy and seconded by Councillor Donny for refusal. So all those in favour of refusal, please show.
7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7.
All those against, please show. Sorry, Sue. I'm afraid it's lost, so it's been refused. Okay. So moving on now to a little bit of housekeeping.
Could we not now, having said that we can't put a condition on it, at what point during that whole meeting were we allowed to put a condition on saying that review permeable surfaces if we voted?
Well, that would be up to the mover and the seconder to move it.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yes,
Which
just,
then?
just for another meeting, I need to know where I am.
Yeah.
Right.
Excuse me, I'm going to carry on with the meeting.
What point of information?
No, I'm going to move on with the meeting, thank you. So we've finished that. So I'll move on to item 5, information on active and closed enforcement investigations. Chris, is there anything you want to, because it's only for noting.
Yeah, no updates on that one.
Right, in which case I'll move it. Tom, second. All those in favour, please show. Appeals, progress report.
Again, no updates on that.
No, and that's just for noting, so I'll pray second. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. And that's the end of the meeting. And thank you for bearing with me.
Jason, can I ask you privately? We can ask you